we see this whole shift with medical dental integration. We've got hygienist screening for sleep apnea. We're talking to patients about medical. We've got medical talking to patients about dental. We have physicians and pediatricians and nurses providing basic oral care services. And so I think that really, as hygienists, being aware of what the ages are for prevention screenings is really important. Our patients really do look to us for so much more than to just clean their teeth. And as hygienists, we've been fighting for them to see us in a different way too. We want them to see us in a way of this person's not just here to clean my teeth. This person's here to help me be healthier and better overall.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, an Endeavor Business Media production. This is episode number 397. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Great show coming at you today as we bring back everyone's favorite, Brooke Crouch. You'll hear later on in this episode what a crazy turn of events happened to their family and how they're coping with it. My opinion, it's got to be tough because, we go along life, we have our ups and downs, but sometimes we think that these downs that we have are like these ginormous problems. But then something like this happens with a diagnosis of colon cancer. And it really puts into perspective how trivial I think some of our perceived problems are. And so Brooke is here to help us kind of catch perspective, help us see what is important in life, what's not. But beyond that, I think she gives us some really good ideas about how to help our patients, whether they're going through something similar or whether we can be kind of on the lookout for potential problems. And that is through better follow-up questions on our medical dental history, taking time, listening, engaging with our patients, things like that. I know we've talked about this several times, but this is a great reminder of why this is so important. And then next week we have on Mary Jensen on the show, and she's been on several times before, but she's going to come back and talk to us about dental mission trips. She participates in a cleft lip and palate surgery dental mission trip, which I think is absolutely fascinating. So the things I asked her about and things I wanted to know was, kind of a recap of, okay, what is this dental mission? What's the cost? If someone else wants to join, what's the kind of rigmarole of getting accepted? How much time off do they need? What's your role going to be? All the different questions. And so make sure you're coming back for that one. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. A couple things for just kind of housekeeping. This week I will be attending the Credits annual meeting. For those of you who have taken the REB or maybe the NERB or CERTA, Credits is a similar organization. It's another regional testing agency for clinical boards. But what has happened in the last several years is these regional clinical boards have stopped being so regional and kind of have been nationwide. And so I'm really looking forward to going there and seeing my friends. And maybe, I don't know, we'll get a podcast or two going. So the last thing was I was going to read this email. I received an email over the weekend and then a follow-up email again this week. And I wanted to read it to you. It has to do with the fires in Hawaii. But the problem that I'm having with it is legitimacy. I just want to make sure it's real before I read it. But come back next week, and if it is legit, then I'll read that, because I think there's a way that we can help some fellow hygienists and dentists kind of get back on their feet, or at least work towards getting back to some sort of normalcy. But again, this is going to be probably a next week thing. Thank you so much for listening each and every week. I really, really appreciate it. This is a great episode. Don't sleep on it. You're going to love it with Brooke Crouch.
A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome, everyone, into the interview portion of the podcast. I am joined today by the Brooke Crouch, rejoining the podcast.
Yes.
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Holy crap, buddy. We have so many things to talk about.
I
So
know.
many things. I have a list of no less than 10 items that we'll get through three of them probably, as is the usual.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I told you this before we came on, but the audience loves you. They love everything that you do. They love when you're on. I get a lot of good feedback when you're on.
Oh,
And so I think it'd be great for those of them that just want to just catch up with you. Like, what have you been up to? Because we're talking ahead of time. Like, the first time that you were on, you weren't even with Elevate yet. And like so many things have changed over the last like 3 or 4 years for you.
yeah, definitely. So the first time we met and we did a podcast together, I was working for an FQHC here in Virginia, and I was hired. I had been doing school-based sealant program for our state health department for a while, and I had gone to work for this FQHC to start a school-based program for them. And then COVID like shut it all down, and we had to like shift gears, and it was crazy. And I had been doing some like writing and some speaking on dry mouth and just different things, public health stuff as well, just a little bit of a couple different things. And I had been working with Elevate, doing some work with them as far as speaking. I presented at their lunch and learn at RDH under one roof and was just doing some things with them in that capacity. And then I thought, this company's amazing. I want to work for them. So I asked for a job and I went through the process of interviewing for a sales position. And of course, they were kind of like, what are you doing? You've always worked with us, presented on our products, and now you want to do sales for us. And I thought, well, I know nothing about sales, but I love the company and I love what you stand for and I love the way you treat your employees. And I want to be a part of that in whatever capacity that is. So I went into sales and I did that here in Virginia for about a year. And then I just recently in January transitioned to a full-time professional education role. So now I work from home unless I'm traveling to dental conferences and work with schools and just really kind of promoting our silver-diamine fluoride school program. So a lot has
Gosh.
changed
And in such a short time
in
too. Like
such
that's
a
pretty
short
amazing.
time. Yeah.
For the listeners out there, that just as a clarification, this is not sponsored content
That's
by
not. It's
Elevate.
not.
However, I will say my favorite people work for Elevate and it's been awesome. And they've been supporters of the podcast for, I mean, since not from the beginning, but probably 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
straight. So it's been really awesome. All right. So tell me, we're going to try and record it under one roof, but little Miss Busy Pants over there was just presenting all the time. Just can you quickly tell me what you're presenting on over there?
Yeah, so we have a full dry mouth line of products and I have Sjogren's, so I tend to do educational information kind of presentations at the various conferences on dry mouth, not just specifically to our all day products, but I do talk about our all day products, but also just kind of helping raise awareness about the impact that dry mouth has on patients and how prevalent it is and what we can recommend and what are we recommending. So I give presentations pretty much back to back every 15 to 20 minutes during exhibit hours. So we were slammed at under one roof. So it
Mm,
was, the conference was awesome. It was such great energy and so many people there and so many hygienists. So it was slammed. I wanted to come over and see you. It was just I couldn't
I
get
know.
away.
I felt bad, but also I was like, okay, this is really good.
Yeah.
This is really good for Elevate. This is really good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a busy conference though. This
So
was,
busy.
I mean, it was sold out. Like
Yeah.
we said on the podcast lots of times, it's been sold out. Are you going to be doing the same stuff maybe next year
Yeah.
at the booth?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you guys want to listen to Brooke, make sure you guys
Come see me.
register under one roof.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's get into the meat of it.
Okay.
Let's talk about why you're really here because this is from my perspective, we're pretty good friends. You post, I see things, I try and like them if I'm ever on social media, which I'm almost never not. But okay, all of a sudden you dropped off for a little bit.
Right.
Something happened in your life that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So because I never like to keep things boring, Andrew. I like to
I
always
know.
just
Yeah.
have, obviously, right? I have to, yeah. So
Yeah.
I started in my new role in January, which by the way is a brand new role for Elevate. So I'm, drinking from a fire hydrant already in January. So then February, my husband, who's 47 at the time, healthiest guy. I mean, he's never sick. I'm the one that's always got something going on. He's never sick. And so he goes for his physicals every year and goes for his annual physical and never had a colonoscopy. It was never really recommended. And so at 47 for his physical still wasn't recommended because he isn't high risk, no family history, no symptoms. But, I'm a hygienist, so I focus prevention. And ended up, him having his colonoscopy in February, which was his first. And they call us, in and make us wait, and you start getting anxious. And, sure enough, they had found colon cancer. So that was in February, and everything just kind of panic mode set in. And, they kind of tell us like, oh, it's really small, probably early stage. And, the next month was just filled with appointments to only, be told that it is not early stage and that it is progressed to the liver and it's a stage 4 cancer. So that was February. So that was, I was off the grid for the month of February and pretty much the month of March. And it was just really filled with a lot of appointments, lots of waiting. My husband started chemo in April, so we go for chemo every other week. And chemo for colon cancer is about a 3-day process. So it's not like we just go once and, it's a 3-day process, and infusions are almost 6 hours long. So it's been a little crazy.
So the thing is, I have no knowledge of colon cancer or anything. So I'm gonna ask some really stupid basic questions.
Ask it.
And I'm
That's
so
why
sorry.
I'm
here. I'm hoping so. Okay. So I always thought, was it 50? Is 50 about the time that screening starts for men most
Used
of the
to
time?
be. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But, it's used to be. What is it
It's
now
45.
recommended to be? 45.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're high risk. You were saying that he wasn't high risk. What are risk factors?
Well, they technically would be things like family history or any symptoms, anything abnormal, but not always. And in fact, a lot of cases not, so yeah. So 45 is the new age. And that's actually been that way for the last, I think, 3 years. But some people still practice under the mindset of 50. Unfortunately.
Well, if it's anything like dentistry, it'll take a long time to kind of get that changed out, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so tell me like signs and symptoms. So, where I would think that would be like a normal, healthy person,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, what signs and symptoms would I be seeing that would make me like, oh, I should get this checked out?
Probably any change in like GI, any kind of like blood, I guess. That's the biggest sign that people will look for is any kind of like blood in your stool or things like that. But again, it could be absolutely nothing like in our case. So, which is really mind blowing because my husband had physicals every year. Labs have never been off. There's never been anything in lab work that would have said, hey, something's going on here. And I think that's, when we were planning to do our podcast together, I've been thinking like so much about like, what do I, because you have these like crazy life things that go on. And I think that we end up like, me personally is lots of swings, you know what I mean? Like really good days, especially in the beginning, and then really bad days. And you have these swings, and it's like sometimes I'll feel like I really want to do something to like be a patient advocate, and then you're just like, I do not have the energy for that. But I do think that one thing I've really thought a lot about is like, with hygiene, we're preventive, right? Like we're preventive, and we see this whole shift with medical dental integration. We've got hygienist screening for sleep apnea. We're talking to patients about medical. We've got medical talking to patients about dental. We have physicians and pediatricians and nurses providing basic oral care services. And so I think that really, as hygienists, being aware of like what the ages are for prevention screenings is really important because we are chatty Cathys. Well, I am. I'm a chatty Cathy, especially when I'm in
You don't say.
especially when I was in private practice. I mean, you get to know your patients, they become like family. We're seeing the same patients frequently, and we have them in our chair for 45 minutes to an hour. And a lot of times I would find myself just talking about, how's your family doing? Blah, 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 that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But it's been a big shift of like, wow, 45 is the screening, and like colon cancer is alarmingly on the rise in young people, and they don't know why. I mean, we go to a National Cancer Institute hospital, and they will tell you that they are seeing more and more advanced stage colon cancer in young people. There are people in their 30s, there are people in their 20s. And we can't always catch those things, right? But like for sure, 45 is where it needs to start with screening. And we have the opportunity to talk to patients about that. And I think that sometimes like colonoscopies and bowel preps and that stuff, it feels a little awkward, but like, it's really, it's not. We talk to our patients about a lot of stuff,
I mean,
like
it's the other end of the spectrum, like literally
it
for
is.
us.
It
Like,
is the other end. It is
yeah.
the other end. But, talking about prevention and just, for women in their 40s having mammograms to say like, hey, did you know that, 45 is the new age for colon cancer screening? And have you had a colonoscopy? Do you have a doctor? That's really, we could truly, like, we could save someone's life. Like, I think that for sure.
I feel like the medical dental histories have gotten better over the years,
Yes.
right? Like I've been fortunate where, gosh, for I would say well over the majority of my career, it's been a very exhaustive and thorough medical dental history. But I will say, having coached lots of hygienists in my time, I've watched them go review that medical dental history. And when it comes to certain topics, they just say, do you have a history of this? And then they read like 7 things at a time,
Yeah.
and they don't go like one by one
Yeah.
and go like, no,
Yeah.
nope,
Yeah.
never had that.
Yeah.
It's just it. And I don't know if it's just like we're uncomfortable or we don't want to, I don't want to say like we don't want to take the time to do it,
Yeah.
or maybe we don't know the follow-up questions, or maybe we don't know how to handle the yes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool. You had that. Great. Moving on.
Yeah.
Like it's such an awkward conversation sometimes if you're not educated about it.
Yeah. I know. I know. And I think like, you know, always just being able to say if somebody like even if I think if I was having a conversation with someone and I said, "Hey, did you know they've lowered this screening for colonoscopies? You are 45 or 46. Do you have a doctor? Have you talked to your doctor about that?" And then being able to share, hopefully somebody listening to this will hear that you could have no symptoms at all. And thank God for these preventive screenings and these preventive measures, because if we would have waited another year or two, which our doctor probably would have let us do, we would unimaginably be worse off than we are now. So I think that anytime someone gives you a yes or maybe asks questions, like we don't have to know the answers. We can just say, do you have a doctor that you can talk to about that? Do you have a family doctor? And if the answer is no there, then hey, maybe we really can make a big difference in life because they should for sure have a family doctor. And we can,
Mhm.
maybe help make a recommendation or, help guide them in a different way. I just think that our patients really do look to us for so much more than to just clean their teeth. And like as hygienists, we've been fighting for them to see us in a different way
Mhm.
too. Like we
Oh
want
yeah.
them to see us in a way of like, this person's not just here to clean my teeth. This person's here to like help me be healthier and better overall?
Mhm. Oh, of course. Let me and look, if we're not comfortable talking about your husband specifically, we don't have to.
Yeah, I know.
We can just call it like a hypothetical person.
Yeah.
But would you? 'Cause I've never met your husband personally, but would you say that he's more of a? Oh, this is sounding really bad. Kind of like a macho, like jock. Kind of like I'm too like I don't want to. I don't need to worry about health stuff.
No,
Or is he pretty open to it?
pretty open to it. In
Okay.
fact, like even when, his doctor wasn't recommending it, we went the route of Cologuard, which is like the screening, the mail-in screening. That was his suggestion. He was like, "I'm gonna do it." And
Can you go? What is that? I don't know what this
so
is that you're
that
talking
is
about.
like Cologuard is basically where you've probably seen commercials for it before. So like if you're not technically high risk, like we talked about, right? So you don't have a family history or whatever, you can do like a mail-in screening. So they basically, your doctor will prescribe it for you. They send you a box. You send a sample back in a box and they test it that way. So it's not as invasive as in like you don't have to go under anesthesia and things like that, like you do with the colonoscopy. But they're also not super accurate. And they'll say that they frequently will get false positives and false negatives. We got a positive. And anytime you get a positive, that you have to have a colonoscopy. But a lot of people get false positives. A lot of people get false negatives. So I would say that he was very open to it, but his doctor didn't think he needed it. So he went the less invasive route. And thankfully he did. The only thing about that, and I will say it just from hearing other people's stories, is that by going that route, like let's say you do a Cologuard screening and you have to have a colonoscopy. If it comes back positive and you have to have a colonoscopy and they don't find cancer, which most of the time they don't, your insurance company they are going to fight for paying for that colonoscopy because you did the Cologuard. So in my experience, it's just better to go the colonoscopy route. I mean, really, it's the most definitive way. Of course, the prep is not fun, but it's the most definitive way to know what's going on.
I want to talk about the prep for a minute, but before we get there, because I'm kind of stuck on this thing, I see the patient right in my head where I'm like, hey, I'm going to talk to you about health stuff. And he's just like, I'll just clean my teeth. Don't worry about all this other stuff. Right. And maybe it's, people listening, their spouse, needs to have these procedures done, but the person's maybe too proud. How can you convince someone that's just too proud? Like, how can you at least open up that conversation gently to getting them to be open to it?
It's funny because the girl that does my hair, my friend that does my hair, she's at high risk because her mom had it and her uncle died from it. So they're really high risk. And her brother will not go get a colonoscopy. And he's like in his 40s, he will not do it. So the exact kind of person you're talking about. And I don't know how you do it. I mean, all that I can, what I share with my friend, I'm like, you really got to try to convince them to do it, because even if there was something there, it could be addressed so much easier than like waiting until it's progressed. And I think just really, really raising awareness of the fact of like, it is on the rise and doctors don't know why. They don't know why.
Yeah.
And so the more we can do to screen, the prevention aspect of it. And like, even if somebody were to have a colonoscopy and it was clear, they don't have to do it. Typically, they won't make you do it again for like 3 to 5 years. So it's not something that you have to go and do continuously, but you really need a baseline. You really do need just a baseline to be able to go by. It's screening, but it's the same kind of people that don't do any kind of preventive screening. So I think the more just trying to educate on the prevention aspect of it, it's about all you can do. Because I can definitely say, and I've heard this, so I do want to give a big shout out on here in case there is anyone listening that does have someone going through colon cancer or anything like that. We have found the best Facebook group called Colon Town. And I actually found it through another hygienist whose husband was going through this. And I'm not kidding you. This group is saving lives. They are connected to some of the top surgeons across the country. And these doctors will come on and do webinars for us for free. There's a care partner site. We've learned about things through this group that our doctors don't even know. My husband's enrolled in a clinical trial now that a lot of this we learned from the group. So, I think that prevention aspect is just, it's so important. And so finding like support, and I can say that like, even if my husband were a little bit more like, I'm not doing that, like everything we're going through now, I can't imagine just not getting the screening done.
Let's talk about the prep a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of apprehension about the prep. Can you walk us through the steps and kind of what one might expect?
Yes. Yes. So, and it's funny because I get them, I've been getting them. I actually think my first one was at like 35, and that was for family history kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So, yeah, the prep is the prep is the prep. You're down a good day before the procedure, but yeah, it's a lot of laxatives. It's a lot of laxatives. It's a good cleanse. It's a good cleanse. So look at it that way. Um, it's not that bad though. I've done it a couple times now, and I mean, yeah, it's a lot of trips to the bathroom for a few hours, but and they even like everybody's a little bit different. So it used to be like you had to drink all these liquids and like Gatorade, and like that's how I've had to do it.
Yeah.
But then for my husband's first colonoscopy, his prep, his doctor prefers this it's like a pre-made solution, and insurance didn't cover it. Shocker, I know, but it was like $100 out of pocket, which was not bad considering all the money you spend in like laxative, and the prep was so much easier. So it just depends on the doctor and what their preferred prep is, but it's
Is it
it
24 hours in advance, 12 hours in advance? What do you
it's about it's you usually start like around 2 o'clock the day before.
Okay. And then
So
also no eating, no
right.
none of that,
It's like a
right?
clear liquid diet, from, like, the afternoon before. So, you have about a day where you're not eating a lot, but it's not bad. It's really not. It's not.
So I feel like that's one of the things like you always hear the horror stories of like, oh my gosh, you're gonna be on the
Yeah.
toilet for all day long. And then the people that I've actually talked to that have had it, they're like, that's not that bad.
It's
It's
really
like it's
it's really
it
not that bad.
it's if you had an upset stomach, like
Yes.
that's it. Like it's not
That's
that
that's exactly what it's like. It is not that bad. It's not that bad. Considering what it's, like, saving you from, it's not bad.
so let's go through if someone was diagnosed,
Mhm.
there are probably several different options that are available for treatment.
Mhm.
Can you just kind of give a high level overview of like a couple of those options? You mentioned chemo
Mhm.
earlier.
Yeah, so usually, and I will just say too, and I think that we hear this a lot, like we hear it a lot about people getting second opinions and things like that, like for sure do it because so we live where we live. We don't live in like a big city necessarily, but we definitely started with chemo, and that it just wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good fit where we were going. It's, like I mentioned, it's like an almost 6-hour infusion. They wouldn't let me go back with him. It just wasn't a good fit. Every time we went
Mhm.
to go, we both just felt sick about the process, and so we're like, "You know what? This isn't working. So we gotta figure this out." So we, like, got rid of our oncologist, which was really scary because
So hard.
yeah, and then we started with a new, oncologist. We also traveled about 2 hours from home to also see that's where we go to, like, a National Cancer Institute. So chemo's one of the routes. Sometimes they might be able to do surgery. Sometimes they'll do some chemo and then surgery. We actually are on the path for a liver transplant. So we are doing chemo and can't really have a liver surgery right now, but we're hoping for a liver transplant. We are starting a clinical trial on Monday. So there's a lot of options out there. And I think that, like, when we start this clinical trial, we'll be traveling 2 hours from home every other week. And it's a lot, but it's worth it. Like when we go to this hospital system, everybody is so caring and helpful. And they let me go back there and they make us as comfortable as we can be. And like we didn't have that where we were. And so it's worth it. It's worth it to get the second opinions and to, put it put the energy into being in the right place.
Is it common that the liver is always involved with colon cancer? Or is this something like a special case for you guys?
It's very common. It's very common. The most common places it'll spread will be the liver and the lungs,
Interesting.
and
Which
it's
just complicates things
that makes it more
incredibly.
complicated. The
Yeah.
liver being the worst place because it's just harder to work around that. And even though you can remove up to 80% of your liver, not if there's tumors covering the whole thing. So then they don't wanna you have to look for a surgeon that's willing to potentially do that. But living donor liver transplants are becoming incredibly common for treatment. of metastatic colon cancer to the liver. So that's the path that we're on, even though it's a strict one. It's a really strict path. Very few people get to that point. I
Mhm.
also think what people don't realize, because I know I did never realize this, colon cancer is a beast. The recurrence rate is about 80%. The recurrence rate, even with a liver transplant, is about 70%. It just typically doesn't come back in the liver because you've got someone else's liver,
Mhm. Mhm.
but it commonly pops up other places. It's relentless. It's relentless. And I don't think that we realize that. I don't think we realize that. I think that, one thing that I've kind of experienced in this journey a little bit is that we think about, and how many patients do we have that come and see us with breast cancer, right? Or a history of that was so common. And a lot of times with that common cancer, many times it's surgery, radiation, and chemo. And then most of those patients go into remission. That it is not like that with colon cancer. It is not like that. It is not like that at all. And so that's why I think it's awkward, like the bowel prep, not fun,
Mhm.
but it's a relentless cancer, and,
But do they know why it's so relentless? Like, why is it
I don't know.
so, I mean, so many nooks and crannies in the colon?
I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
It's like, you know what I
I
mean?
don't know. It's just it tends to be an aggressive, it seems, now this is just from what I've learned from talking to other people. It's either not aggressive and responds well, and surgery will, take care of it, or it is more aggressive.
Mhm.
It's they don't know. There's a lot of research being done around it and a lot of trials and things like that going on, but it is relentless. So I think anything that we can do to, like, raise awareness around that and take away the stigma or the concern about the silliness, right? Like the prep and things like that
Mhm.
that we worry about, it's it's worth it.
Yeah. Let me ask this question. So, probably our where this might intersect in a lot of our lives is our patient that's in the chair maybe has a spouse that is going through this, right?
Mhm.
So, like, if you were my patient, what what forms of support either do you wish you would have gotten, or do you think there are just valuable things that you did receive to help you as the spouse supporting your husband?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I was thinking about this too, and I was thinking about, like, when we were gonna have this conversation, I'm like, I really wanna be well, I just never want to come across as like, "Woe is me in this situation." And I think that
Mhm.
you know me well, and people know me well enough that, like, I really don't live in that space. And it's really given me I try not to live in that space most of the time,
You
but,
don't. You definitely
I
don't.
never wanna come across that way, but, like, just the humanness that we can share with people, like, the kindness, like, I think that there's the support has just been it's been incredible support from my friends. Just little texts that I'll get or little things that people will share with me and check in. The little check-ins mean a lot for sure, but from, like, a patient perspective, if someone's there in the chair, I think just being gentle with them, I think that it's the little things that can mean a lot. And so I've thought about that, of just, like, the perspective, and that, like, for example, either that patient, if it's a spouse that's sick and that caregivers there for their dental appointment, they may not even share that their spouse is going through something. That might be their one space. Like, I go to Pure Barre, I like to exercise. I don't tell anyone there that I'm going through this. I mean, some of my friends
Yeah.
know, but I don't share it, right? And because that's my hour, where I go, and that's my space. And so even as simple as coming to a dental appointment might be that person's time to, like, get their hour in, even if it is getting their teeth cleaned or talking. So I think always just being as kind as we can to our patients. I think there's times where, like, we've all had these instances, right, where a patient will come in. I can think of one specifically, and they come in as a new patient, and this poor woman just had, like, I mean, just rampant decay and issues, and she was really well put together, and then she starts sharing, like, "My spouse has been really ill, and I've had to put them first," and we think, "Wow, how did you let yourself get to this?" But, like, just
Yeah.
putting, like, now I'm thinking, like, like there's humanness there, and there's really a
Mm.
lot of just like having perspective of like we really don't know what patients are going through and what they're dealing with. And like the first couple of months of everything we were going through, like, whew, you know, I just any little bit that someone could just like make my life easier by being like friendly and positive and like conversational, it just makes such a difference.
Do you feel like it's crossing the line if, like, say our patient did want to open up to us in the chair, that we sent them maybe a card or some flowers
No,
or
I
a
don't
gift
think
card or
so
something like
at
that?
all. I don't think so at all. Like, I think that's so like, I'll get little, like, $5 gift cards, from friends, like, one of and this is a crazy pivot, but just kinda shows you, like so one of my mom's good friends, she was supposed to have a hip replacement. And she goes and she's here locally as well. She goes in because you have all these, like, pre-screenings for surgeries like that, right? And
Mhm.
one of her labs came back, I can't remember which one it was, but it came back, like, crazy high, and they were like, "You need to go to the emergency room, like, something's wrong with this lab." Sure enough, they find stage 4 colon cancer. She had had regular colonoscopies, but they did a colonoscopy, found it had spread to her pancreas, and now she's dealing with pancreatic cancer and colon cancer and still couldn't get the hip replacement, right? So she's been same thing, got a second opinion, getting great care at the same cancer center we go to, and she sends me gift cards to Chick-fil-A, like, every couple of months. Like, it's just those
Oh,
little things that's
yeah.
like, wow, I'll get them, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh," because I give them to my son too, and, like, that's the thing when you've got kids, when you're going through these things, like, if somebody sends me a gift card, sometimes I'll just give it to my son so that he can not have to worry about, lunch or dinner if it's something where we're gone or so no, I don't think so at all. I think it shows so much kindness.
I don't think that I've ever seen, at least in dental, see like classes and conferences and things like that. But I'm sure someone's going to want to know more about this. Where do you find, outside of that Facebook group, where do you find the best information is found?
I think that one of the best things to do, I mean, you can look on like the American Cancer Society's page. They are a great resource. I think that this Facebook group is the actual best. They just really are, especially, I mean, they truly are. They are endorsed by like the world's leading surgeons.
Wow.
And these
Holy crap.
surgeons will do consults for patients because they're a part of this group. And it's just, now you have to be careful. Like I have found sometimes if I go down a rabbit hole too much on social media with it, I will get very stressed and anxious. So I would say, be cautious of it. There's a fine line between doing your research, but you can't overwhelm yourself too. So I think the Cancer Society, I think going to some of these larger facilities pages, so like Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, they are a great cancer institute for colon cancer. City of Hope, which is in California. You can go to any of these websites and you can read more and get some resources there. But I would definitely go to the American Cancer Society. Cleveland Clinic is another one that offers really great information on colon cancer. I think going to any of those sites is great. And then I think just like looking for podcasts, I will look for podcasts sometimes and try to find different things on podcasts about, cancer and clinical trials and things like that. You can always go to clinicaltrials.gov, I think it is, to see what's going on in case you or a loved one has something that you're looking for a clinical trial for. So,
Holy crap. Lots of resources out there.
oh my
You
gosh.
really have done your research on this. I
Andrew,
like it.
I'm like between like I never know if I'm like got my Elevate hat on or if I've got my colon cancer hat on. Like, what are we doing today?
Oh
Like
my
it's
gosh. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, but what, man, I'm very grateful for you. I'm really sad that this is happening to you, but I'm very also happy that you're strong enough that you're able to kind of withstand some of the hurdles and obstacles that are coming your way. You're able to share. You're so eloquent, which I love. And I know this is going to help someone else. Are you open to people reaching out to you and asking you
Yeah.
questions if this is happening to them or their spouse?
Yeah, I would love it. I would love it. Please do. And I think like one thing I really wanted to like end on with this is that like I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but, like, sometimes you go through things that are just, like, life I mean, it's like an atomic bomb's gone off and you're rebuilding, but, like, there can be so much beauty in finding new paths. Like, yeah, it's really tough. And like, I really wish the universe could have given us a smaller, like, nudge, but we've grown in so many good ways in the last 6 months. I mean, I think that my awareness and things, and I know I am not the same person I was 6 months ago. And my husband, of course, I mean, we've grown in really good ways. And our son's a senior, and our family has really gotten closer. And I think that those are all beautiful points out of this mess. So I just share that, and that even though things can be really, really hard, there can be a lot of beautiful things that come out of it too. And my friendships have strengthened, my friends that have been there, like it's been good, even though it's been bad, if that makes sense.
No, I hear that so much. I love it. How might they reach out to
Yeah.
you if they wanted to?
So you can email my personal email. That's probably the better route than my Elevate email, but my personal email, and it's long, so I'm sorry, but it's Brooke Crouch dental consulting at gmail.com. And that's my personal email. And that's the best way to reach out to me.
All right. And I'll have that in the show notes too, in case you can't remember that
Yes, that
long.
long,
It's not
that
that long.
long
It's,
email.
it's 4 words. It's fine. But Brooke, thank you so much for being on. I really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
you.
me.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.